for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello and welcome to On the Money, where we're focused as ever on the UK's cost of living crisis, helping you to beat the squeeze. I'm Mark Longhurst, sitting in for Liam, and in this next hour we're taking you shopping. Yes, as the latest retail sales figures are released, we'll see if the cupboard is still bare or whether our panel of experts who'll be joining us can find something tempting to put into our shopping basket to cheer us all up. We'll be on the case with On the Money. First, though, the GB News headlines with Rosie.
Good afternoon, it's 1 o'clock. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date on GB News. The cost of living crisis is expected to get worse. A consultancy firm is warning today that energy bills could hit £4,200 in the new year. That's around £650 more than Cornwall Insight had previously forecast. Well, it comes after the energy regulator Ofgem announced it's changed the way it calculates the price cap. Bills are expected to be slightly lower in the second half of the year. Tory leadership candidate Liz Truss says if she becomes Prime Minister, her priority will be to help households.
Well, what I'm doing is making sure people are paying less taxes and also having a temporary moratorium on the green energy levy to save people money on their fuel bills. In advance, we'll see what the situation is like in the autumn, but I'm committed to making sure people are supported, and I'm committed to growing the economy.
Deputy Prime Minister Dominic Raab says Liz Truss's plan to cut taxes will hurt the party in the next election.
I think public enemy number one is inflation. We've got to get inflation down. If we don't, then it eats away at people's savings. Any money that is handed back to people through tax cuts will be taken away with higher inflation and higher interest rates on the other hand. And of course, we've got an election in 2 years' time. People are going to judge us on the credibility and the fairness with which we approach the current global challenges with inflation, but which, of course, hitting people up and down the country in the UK.
A court has heard that there were red flags in the relationship between the former Manchester United footballer Ryan Giggs and his ex-girlfriend. Kate Greville says she told detectives it was almost like he was two people. The prosecution at Manchester Crown Court says Giggs' public persona had an ugly and sinister side. Ryan Giggs is alleged to have assaulted Greville and her younger sister Emma. The ex-player denied the allegations and has pleaded not guilty. The NHS has virtually cleared the backlog of people waiting more than 2 years for a routine operation. In January, more than 22,000 people have been waiting 2 years or longer for scans, checks and surgery. Now there are fewer than 200 people on that list. Earlier this year, the NHS published a recovery plan to tackle the pandemic backlog. Their next aim is to eliminate 18-month waits. NHS workers in England and Wales have been asked to vote on industrial action following a dispute over pay. It's both the Royal College of Nursing and the Unite Union who are recommending members support a walkout. Officials say the current NHS staffing crisis is causing unacceptable risks to patients and workers. The ballot closes in mid-September. A 4-day amber warning for extreme heat has been issued from Thursday across parts of England and Wales. The Met Office says temperatures are expected to reach the mid-30s. It's after a heat health alert was issued for much of the country. Some regions are also facing hosepipe bans because of the extended dry spell. The FBI has raided Donald Trump's Florida estate as part of an investigation into his handling of official presidential documents. The former US president says officers broke into his safe while searching for classified records from the White House. In New York at the time of the raid, Trump described the action as unnecessary, saying he's been cooperating with government agencies. Democrat and human rights lawyer Qasim Rashid told us it's a major development in the investigation.
But we'll see what the FBI has charged him with or what they're trying to charge him. We'll find out soon enough. It's too early to tell. But I think the sheer fact, and I just want to really emphasize this point, is that this isn't a political investigation. This was something that was signed off by Christopher Wray, the FBI director who Trump himself approved and appointed, and approved by a judge as well.
John Travolta has paid tribute to his Grease co-star Dame Olivia Newton-John, who's died aged 73. Well, posting a statement, he said, "You made all of our lives so much better. Your impact was incredible." Her husband confirmed that she passed away peacefully at home in California, surrounded by friends and family. Fans have been leaving flowers on the singer's star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. This is GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's head back to On the Money.
Rosie, thank you very much indeed, and welcome to Tuesdays on the Money with me, Mark Longhurst, sitting in for Liam, and we're going to take you shopping today. Not much left in the kitty, I'm afraid, but let's see what we can afford. First on the list, a new government. Any government, in fact. Prime Minister Boris Johnson and wife Carrie, of course, back from what was called a mini-moon at a wellness retreat in Slovenia. Mini-moon as in curtailed honeymoon, not a quick flash of the prime ministerial posterior, you understand, although it might as well have been, according to the CBI, Britain's foremost business lobbying group. The government should be getting a grip, they've snorted. There is a power vacuum at the top that was leading to a summer of drift, they warned, at a time when urgent action was needed. Well, echoing sunny Jim Callaghan's crisis what crisis moment back in 1979, when he returned from an international summit in the Caribbean to face the winter of discontent, Boris Johnson, obviously now full of wellness, retorted there would be no immediate measures to help with the cost of living crisis. Number 10 said we would have to wait until a new government opened up shop in September. So that's off our list for starters. Next, how about a nice juicy portion of electricity from our nice friends in Norway? You know, the ones that give us the giant Christmas tree for Trafalgar Square every year. No, now we're off their list, it seems. Our handy North Sea interconnector link that usually fills our grid with 1.4 gigawatts of Norwegian power, no less, a quarter indeed of what we normally import, is like everything else with a 13-amp plug on the end of it, heading for rationing, it seems. The heat waves have threatened Norway's hydroelectric system, we're being told. The reservoirs are a third below what they should be, so they've told us they're keeping any juice they've got. Never mind, let's go and grab a few bags of coal, to fire up our old power stations. Sharp intake of breath from the national grid. That's going to be very expensive, they warn, as they tot up our potential bill for that. So, how about heading down to the high street with our remaining loose change for a little light retail therapy? Well, the latest sales figures show we have indeed been out and about spending. Barclaycard saying retail figures in July up 7.7% on last year. Eating and drinking out rising at an annual 9%, they say. But they're also warning if you strip out the soaring inflation, increased sales actually compute to a 2% fall in spending. The British Retail Consortium marking up a 2.3% rise in July. High street spending up on last year. But again, those figures masking, they say, a drop in volume when inflation is added to the mix. So it seems we're spending more, but shopping less. Why? Well, that outlay on utility bills up an eye-watering 44%, they've calculated. So a lot of our money going on the essentials, fuel, butter, milk, while cutting back on holidays abroad. Crisis? What crisis? Enough to make you to head off to Slovenia to buy a little wellness. Well, before we head to our panel to carry on shopping, more on the breaking news from the US this morning, with the FBI revealing that it had raided the home of former US President Donald Trump. Agents executing a search warrant. They entered the house, even broke open the former president's personal safe. Well, the search is reportedly connected to the investigation into Trump's handling of official papers. Now, our Home and Security editor Mark White has this update for us.
Overnight, police blocked off the entrances to Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate as a team of FBI agents searched through his Florida home. The former president was in New York at Trump Tower at the time of the raid. But in a statement, he said these were dark times for the nation. As dozens of Trump supporters gathered outside Mar-a-Lago, his lawyers said FBI agents had broken into a safe in the property and removed papers. The raid was met with anger on the streets here as supporters claimed Donald Trump continues to be the victim of a state-orchestrated witch hunt.
In my own opinion, I think it's another unjust, made-up thing like the impeachment hoaxes.
It never has happened before. They should go after things that are clearly a violation.
In my opinion, this is communism. Right here, you can see where I'm from. I live this. I know what this is all about.
The raid is reportedly linked to an investigation into Donald Trump's handling of official papers after he left office. All official documents are supposed to be handed over to the National Archive at the end of a president's time in office. In February, the National Archive said it had retrieved 15 boxes of papers from Mar-a-Lago. The agency told Congress the documents included some marked as classified.
This is an apolitical investigation. This was something that was signed off by Christopher Wray, the FBI director who Trump himself approved and appointed, and approved by a judge as well.
We will never give in, we will never give up.
There is intense speculation in the States about whether Donald Trump intends to run for office again in the 2024 presidential elections. And at the conservative CPAC conference in Texas at the weekend, the former president continued to hint he may well take another run at the White House.
We have to take this chance to shatter the corrupt Washington establishment once and for all. We have to run aggressive, unrelenting and boldly populist campaigns. Populist, we want to be populist. We want to love our country. That's what we want.
Friends of the former president, including GBNews presenter Nigel Farage, say they're in no doubt the FBI is being weaponized against Donald Trump.
To any fair-minded person, they're going to say, how on earth can this be happening in 21st century America? What have we become? A banana republic? And actually, in terms of the electorate and fair-minded people, it will play very heavily in Donald Trump's favour.
It's unclear whether the FBI intends to go any further with its investigation now that papers have been recovered. As for Donald Trump, he's clearly smarting from this intervention. Many supporters believe it may only serve to stiffen his resolve, ensuring he does decide to run for office again in 2024. Mark White, GB News.
And of course, more from Mark as we get those updates on that breaking news out in Washington. Let's look at things closer to home now, because we promised you we'd be going shopping. Joining us to give us a reaction to the latest retail sales figures today and the continuing cost of living crisis, of course, Tom Holder joins us from the British Retail Consortium. And here in the studio, Tash Courtney-Smith, retail analyst and founder and CEO of Bolt Digital, and Myron Jobson, who's senior personal finance analyst at Interactive Investor. All the experts. Welcome to you all. First, though, Tom, I'll bring you in because the BRC have got the figures as well as Barclaycard today, and it's telling a bit of a different story. The spending is up, but when you strip out inflation, it means that actually we're sort of standing still or even going into negative territory.
That's it. I mean, as the costs go up, as prices on the shelves go up, you've got to take that into account when you look at spending. You know, we might be buying 2.3% more Mars bars, but if Mars bars have gone up 9%, then actually the number we're selling is going down. So that's what we mean when we say that sales have risen slightly, but once inflation's taken account, the overall volumes of what's being sold has almost certainly gone down.
And we're not treating ourselves to Mars bars. It seems that, you know, we're having to spend that money on essentials, butter, milk, fuel and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. Non-discretionary spending is, you know, basically where all our money ends up going. Discretionary spending is down. There's been a little bit of exception on some things related to the heat wave. So some certain summer clothing, fans, electric fans, and other, air conditioning units have been selling very, very well. Although I think a lot of us at home will be wondering, was that really a non-discretionary purchase during the heat wave? So, those have been selling well, but there's many other areas where sales have been a lot less buoyant.
OK, well, Tom, stay with us because we'll bring Myron and Tash in here in the studio. Myron, we literally seem to be watching the pennies, and another indication that household budgets are being squeezed ever further.
Yeah, it's quite interesting, isn't it, with these figures? I suppose after the past 2 years we've had with COVID-stricken summers, there's still appetite to spend on fun in the sun, really. But given that we are in this once-in-a-generation type cost of living crisis, many of us simply can't afford to spend money on things that we like to in the summer. So but even saying that, people are still finding ways of spending money, even though their budgets are tight.
Well, yeah, I guess, there may be a few quid under the mattress that people have kept hold of during the pandemic, when, of course, they weren't able to go out and spend, but that's going to run out pretty soon, isn't it?
Exactly. These so-called accidental saviours, people were able to save money because the COVID restriction meant that they couldn't really go out and spend that money, and people have some savings, but that is, for a lot of people, that's quickly eroding because of the cost of living pressures on budgets.
Tash, the other thing is this psychological, the doom and gloom. We've got another warning now that this price cap is going to go up to 4,266 in January, according to Cornwall Insight, which is the latest estimate. People are going to be scared, aren't they?
I think people are going to be properly terrified. It's really interesting when we look at the retail figures and whether something is technically up or stripping out inflation, it's down, and all these tiny nuances in spending, when in actual fact you have a population who are just feeling, underlying consumer sentiment is low, they're feeling frightened. Who can afford those sorts of electricity bills? It doesn't matter what segment of society you're looking at, whether you're looking at everyday people through to the rich and wealthy. No one can afford those sorts of electricity bills or wants to pay them, and no one's been used to historically paying electricity at that sort of price.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the thing. We've actually been sort of softened up a little bit by the fact that interest rates have been so low, so the mortgage has been OK, and relatively, our energy costs have been pretty stable.
I think when we look back at this, we'll think, gosh, we were living in a period of real luxury and we just didn't know it. Because there was so much stuff that's been going on for, a long period of time of low interest rates. A lot of, in retail, there's a huge number of brands that are funded by private equity money. Even things like Uber, they're all funded companies. So in some extent, all these lifestyle benefits that we've got used to, like calling Ubers, travelling around, is all supported by money that is just not going to be here anymore. So we will look back in the future and think, wow, that was an incredibly luxurious time compared to what is approaching, and we didn't realise that at the time we were living in.
Yeah, you never had it so good.
Yeah, well, you never realise these things. You don't realise ever these things until you look back on them with hindsight, do you? You think it's normal, and you think these things are fixed, and that electricity is always going to be the cost that it's going to be, and then a brutal shift happens, you realise it's changing.
Tom, there were some other figures that came out from Barclaycard that were released at the same time as British Retail Consortium. There was one that I found quite interesting. They said that eating and drinking out rose at an annual 9%. I mean, is that people really getting so desperate, think we've got to go and try and cheer ourselves up a little bit?
It could well be people taking a sort of cheap evening out in a way. And even, if more people go for restaurants or cinemas often do well, during recessions or during times where the economy is not doing so well. So it may well be people looking for cheaper entertainment for an evening rather than those big spending or big tourism opportunities they might otherwise have selected to go on. And that said, there has been a bit of a rise in tourism into the UK, which has also helped boost spending a little bit and has been a huge benefit to the UK economy at the moment.
Yeah, well, let's bring in, trying to do the calculations, Myron, on that, because the importance of this is we've got Liz Truss particularly saying that the way to get out of this is growth in the economy. That's not going to happen unless people feel comfortable enough to spend.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're in this really harsh reality where a lot of people have to make sacrifices in order to maintain the same level of spend and also the same level of lifestyle that they're used to. So we've heard really harsh stories of people who, on the breadline, having to forego meals just to,
heat or eat,
crisis, this dilemma. And unfortunately, that looks like it's going to continue on, onto autumn
or even
months.
worse.
Even worse so. We know about the rise in the energy price cap that's yet to come, and it's going to be higher than what even Ofgem initially predicted.
And a lot higher than the government was actually calculating in terms of any handouts.
Exactly, and that's important to bear in mind in terms of what you said, the handouts of £400 support.
Not going to go very far, is it?
Exactly, even the £650 one-off payment to those on low income, it's just not going to go far enough.
The other aspect, Tash, is when we talk about energy, we concentrate on households. Of course, industry is going to have to pay these higher prices. And again, we've not heard anything, it seems, from the two candidates to be Prime Minister on what they will be doing to help industry, apart from maybe the Trust cut back in corporation tax to 19% from 25%.
Yeah, our focus has been very much on consumers, but that all of it what's inevitable is all of it focuses through is whether or not the government can do anything for a start, and then all of it focuses down to ends up with consumers. As industry faces higher costs, then costs rise. Costs will rise in supply chains. Costs will rise in service suppliers as well.
And of course, they pass that on directly to the consumer.
Well, they
might
not be for now, but at some point they're going to have to. So it's all a bit of a lull before a storm, really.
Yeah. So do you think they're actually trying to absorb as much as they can at the moment?
I think. We work with lots of retail brands, and some of them are certainly trying to absorb as much as they can. But there's not that much absorption available. So I think right now we're in a state of play where consumers are thinking, OK, so we can carry on spending for now because this isn't happening till September or January. People are trying to absorb costs, but that's not going to carry on because it will be a never-ending losing battle.
And actually, just to add to that, not only are our consumers paying a little bit more, even though retailers are trying to absorb costs, but we're also seeing that shrinkflation, come back to play. So we're,
explain what that is again.
Shrinkflation. So when an item of or whatever is just reduced in size.
So the Mars bar that we were talking about with Tommy actually is a lot smaller than it used to be.
Unfortunately, so.
Yeah. So we've got stagflation now. We've got shrinkflation as well. So
and we are paying the same or even more
for a smaller product. Yeah, good point. Yeah. OK, well, stay with us. We're going to discuss this a little bit more, and Tom's going to stay with us as well. You're watching On the Money with me, Mark Longhurst, in for Liam today. Coming up, farmers across the UK struggling too with rising food and production costs. Our GB News reporter has been travelling the home nations to dig down more and find out what's happening. Stay with us. You're On the Money.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness, man.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to On the Money with me, Mark Longhurst, sitting in for Liam this lunchtime. Let's bring you some breaking news. We're just getting from Mark White, our Home and Security Editor, who hopefully will be joining us in the studio in a moment. Breaking news is that plans for an asylum seekers accommodation centre in the village of Linton-on-Ouse in Yorkshire have now been abandoned after the Ministry of Defence has withdrawn its consent for using that base. Now, there were controversial plans to house hundreds of asylum seekers at this former RAF base next to the village. But GB News can confirm now that that plan has been abandoned. We are expecting an official statement from the Home Office, but it's understood the Ministry of Defence has actually withdrawn this permission in the last few minutes. Villagers had launched the campaign to halt the plans when they were announced back in April. Local people saying the plans to house up to 1,500 men there, as I said, would destroy village life and could jeopardise the safety of the local population. Well, Mark has joined us in the studio hot foot with this breaking news. It's the village, basically, who've been flying the flag on this, saying we really don't want this. The Ministry of Defence have capitulated, but we don't know what the Home Office are going to say as yet.
Well, indeed, the Home Office are due to make a statement formally very shortly, but yes, confirming to me that those plans have been abandoned now because the Ministry of Defence has withdrawn permission for the Home Office to use that base. You're right in saying the villagers have been really spearheading this campaign. The last thing they wanted was for up to 1,500 young men to be housed at the former RAF base there. I've been up there. The base is right next to the village. The village runs along the perimeter fence.
Right.
Off the base itself. There are only about 400 villagers there, so 1,500 young men in that village who, of course, have the ability, would have had the ability to wander around. That
was the point I was going to ask you. What would have been the status? Because obviously they're not facing charges of any kind in terms of being within a compound. They'd be able to go
there are asylum
to
seekers who are being processed. So they are free to come and go. They would have been free to come and go from that base. Now, what the Home Office said is that they would provide facilities at the base for them to do things, activities and the like. And they would also be given bus fares or bus rides into York if they wanted to. But given that they don't have much in the way of an allowance each week to spend, they probably wouldn't be doing that very often. So the villagers had some real concern that all of these young men would be hanging about the village.
I'm just looking
at... doesn't have the infrastructure.
Hambleton District Council, local authority also saying we just can't cope with this. But, I mean, you've been down at Dover looking at the increasing numbers of people coming across the channel. I mean, there's a real problem for the government in what to do physically with these people, let alone the political aspect of it.
There is no doubt this is a massive setback for the Home Office because already now, this year, we are 18,700 people who've crossed on small boats. We're on track, I think, to hit 20,000 within a week. And they need to house them somewhere. Now, we, just a couple of months ago, were reporting that up to 30,000 hotel rooms are being requisitioned by the Home Office for use every single day at a cost of £5 million a day. That has increased now, obviously, by a good 10,000 since we did that report. There is a crisis. They need to accommodate these people. One of their plans was to try to use infrastructure like these old military bases where they could house people in significant numbers.
Were cruise liners mentioned at one point as well, I seem to remember?
Well, Rishi Sunak has actually said that would form part of his policy for helping to deal with the issue, to use cruise liners as a means of getting significant numbers of them together and not having to take up housing stock or take up hotel accommodation.
Would Dover have enough spare berths for wonders for the cruise liners?
Yeah, indeed. They're scratching their head. Liz Truss was saying that she understood it wasn't going ahead this morning as well. Quite what her plans are to deal with all of these people, I don't know.
Mark, we'll let you go so you can go and find out more and update us here on GB News. For the moment, thanks for that breaking news. But let's return to our guests now with On the Money. And, of course, we're talking about the cost of living crisis and, indeed, in detail, energy problems and the latest retail figures. We were talking to Tash and Myron here in the studio just before the break about the impact of the price cap. I mean, the latest figures we're getting is 4,200 plus for January, and also the fact that we've got another review in April, because it's happening now every 3 months. Yep. I mean, what will that do in terms of persuading people to actually, number one, turn the thermostat down, but number two, not go out and spend in the economy to get growth going?
Well, it's going to do all of those things. Firstly, people will turn the thermostat down, which will be detrimental to certain vulnerable segments of society and all of us in terms of the lifestyle we're used to. People are going to have to spend less elsewhere, which will then affect the overall economy. I mean, there's over 100,000 people who've signed a petition just saying they're just not going to pay the bills.
Yes, and that's growing, it seems,
it's
all
growing,
the time.
Yeah.
But, I mean,
and we haven't faced a situation in this country where tens or hundreds of thousands of people just don't pay something they're meant to pay. You know, we haven't faced people, not for a long time, not paying mortgages, not paying bills, just abjectly refusing to pay, and that could be something.
And people like Martin Lewis, money-saving expert, has basically said, you know, this is the civil disobedience, if you like, is going to grow because people physically can't make ends meet anymore.
Yeah, people are calling on the government to do more, and the government is saying, OK, we'll just wait and see. But people want help now. Yes, we know that there have been support packages. So we know we received help on our council tax, and also there's a £400 energy bill grant that's been given to us. Fine, and there's also the £650 for those who are most vulnerable in society.
But clearly, you know, just to touch on this last point, that if either Rishi Sunak or Liz Truss are going to up, and she doesn't like handouts, we're being told, where is the money going to come from to actually provide that? They're going to have to borrow, aren't they?
Well, that's the thing. That's the question. Is it borrow or just try to raise more tax revenue? Although a lot of people, such including myself, they maybe have a look at cutting income tax rather than give an actual handout. Yeah.
Tash, Myron, for the moment, thank you. And Tom will still be with us with the British Retail Consortium. Back to that story in a moment. Also, after the break, hearing how heating hubs might be the norm this winter. Norway now threatening to cut our energy supplies from the rest of Europe. First, let's get an update on the GB News headlines with Rosie.
Good afternoon, it's 1:31. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date on GB News. As we've been hearing some breaking news in the last few minutes, GB News' sources have confirmed controversial plans to house hundreds of asylum seekers at a former RAF base in Yorkshire have been abandoned. It's understood that the Ministry of Defence has withdrawn permission for the Home Office to use the base at Linton-on-Ouse. We'll bring you more on this story as it develops. Well, meanwhile, the number of Channel migrants crossing into the UK on small boats is on course to hit 20,000 within a week. It's after almost 400 arrived on Monday. The Ministry of Defence says at least 386 people were taken off 8 small boats in the English Channel yesterday. GB News' analysis of the latest figures show that nearly 19,000 people have now arrived in UK waters since the 1st of January. Energy bills could end up being higher than first thought, with a consultancy firm warning the price cap will hit more than £4,200 in January. That's around £650 more than Cornwall Insight previously forecast. Well, it comes after the energy regulator, Ofgem, announced it's changed the way it calculates the price cap on bills. Well, a court has heard that there were red flags in the relationship between former Manchester United footballer Ryan Giggs and his ex-girlfriend. Kate Greville says she told detectives it was almost like he was two people. She was interviewed 2 weeks after he allegedly headbutted her in November 2020. He's on trial, accused of assaulting Miss Greville and her younger sister Emma. He denies the charges against him. An amber warning for extreme heat's been issued from Thursday to Sunday across parts of England and Wales. The Met Office say temperatures are expected to reach the mid-30s. It's after a heat health alert was issued for much of the country. Some regions are also facing hosepipe bans. TV online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.210 and 1.183 euros. The price of gold currently stands at £1,471 and 5 pence per ounce.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for real-time investment.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to On the Money with me, Mark Longhurst, sitting in for Liam, and a busy show today. Now let's talk about the cost of living crisis deepening, with rising food costs in particular a concern. Well, the issues surrounding Brexit and the pandemic have left the agricultural industry warning that they've been left in a strange limbo with no real leadership, they say, or direction, and a lack of joined-up government policies. Well, our GB News reporter has been investigating how the industry has been coping home nations, travelling most recently to Scotland and the borders. So joining us now, our GB News reporter Dougie Beattie. And Dougie, what are the farmers talking about across the UK and indeed what they think the government is not doing for them?
Well, as you said, I've spent about a year looking at this in Northern Ireland, decided to come across and come through the UK. So yesterday I was in Scotland, then the borders of Carlisle, then Shrewsbury. Today I'm on my way into Wales. I'm in this beautiful barley field halfway between Shrewsbury and the Welsh borders. And farmers are very much... They're looking at the whole political situation at this minute in time. We had, first of all, we had Brexit. Then we had Theresa May taking over from David Cameron. Then we had the logjam in the House of Commons. Then we had Theresa May going and Boris Johnson coming. Then we had pandemic. And then we now have Boris Johnson going. And in all that, there has been no common agricultural policy put in place to replace that was in Europe. So the farmers in Britain, which is where your money lies, your money for food, etc., actually goes to those farmers and they create your food, are lost. They are saying, well, who's doing what? Because even the farmers in Scotland that supplied the seed potatoes are not allowed to put those into Europe. They can't put them into Europe because Europe are saying that they're not meeting veterinary legislation. Although nothing has changed in Britain, nothing has changed in Scotland. So all those seed material that was supplying most of Europe is no longer there. Ironically, the same company was supplying Ukraine with potatoes, and those potatoes will be coming from Ukraine back into the EU. So there is huge problems with that. We spoke... Yeah, go ahead.
You're talking about potatoes. Just looking behind you, talking about barley. I mean, what's the drought doing as well? Because obviously the crop yields that they were expecting are not going to come through this autumn.
No, because back in April there was a little bit of bad weather, and yields in Northern Ireland, I know there were anywhere from about 2.1 tonnes per acre to 3 tonnes per acre. The financial payback with that was a bit severe because it's costing £240 a tonne to get it out of the ground, because the price of diesel when these crops were planted was 50 pence a litre. It's now 120 a litre, the red diesel. So instead of a combine costing £600 a day to run, it's now costing £1,300 a tonne, and they're only getting £290 a tonne at the farm gate for it, and that's after it's dried.
Yeah, and of course that feeds through then into shop prices as well. Dougie, thank you for updating us there, and we'll catch up with you as you head over the border into Wales as well. Thanks very much indeed. So that's the situation in the agricultural sector. What about the energy sector? Well, as fears grow of rationing for the UK in the coming winter, more bad news today for the national grid. Norway, which has traditionally supplied us with much of its cheap hydroelectric power, say they may now have to turn off their taps. The current drought conditions there affecting reservoirs which power the hydroelectric plants. They are now a third lower, being told. Norway say it will have to keep its home fires burning instead of exporting the power. So we'll have less than the usual 1.4 gigawatts they normally transfer to us, and that will cost a lot more too. More gloom adding to an already bleak picture. Estimates that the UK energy price cap could be now topping £4,200 in January, as we've been discussing. Yet both candidates in the race for Prime Minister criticised for failing to come up with updated plans on energy security. Joining us now, Angela Knight, who's former CEO at Energy UK, and Marion Tash still is in the studio as well. Angela, thanks for your time. Just put into context the importance of this hydroelectric feed from Norway, which may now be a bit of a trickle.
Yes, we'll have to wait and see what happens there, because we do take a reasonable amount from Norway. We also have interconnectors with Belgium, and we have interconnectors with France. Now, as far as I'm aware, in Belgium, of course, their plants are still running fine. But in France, about 50% of their energy fleet is out of action for maintenance or for reasons which are rather more serious than just normal maintenance. So I think what it's saying to us is this, is that our ability to import electricity from places where we have normally done it in the past is not going to be something we can rely on this winter. So as such, we've got to look to our own security, both in respect of what we can produce out of the various plants we've got available, and even though some of them may be mothballed or we had intended to shut them down. And we also, at the same time, need to look at our own consumption. Can the UK, as a combined country, and both the people in it and indeed the businesses in it, think of ways where they can reasonably reduce consumption? Now is the time to make those plans.
Let's pick that apart a little then, Angela. First of all, to the additional cost of this, because obviously Norway will be wanting to charge us more. You can understand why. The latest estimate was 4,200 odd or 266 for January for the price cap. I mean, is that going to go higher still? Because clearly the national grid has now got to start recalculating again.
OK. Well, that's an estimated price cap at this stage for domestic use, which includes both gas and electricity. Gas, of course, is the larger part of the bill for a domestic user, whereas industry uses more electricity. Do I think that the Norway issue has been factored into the estimates that we've got at the moment? Well, it has sort of been lurking around for a little while. And I do know that the latest estimate has come out in the last 24 hours. But we are a long way from coming to the point at which an accurate estimate can be made and the cap set. The cap is due to be set, or the next cap setting is due at the end of August. I appreciate that I'm not giving you a huge amount of confidence because I don't think that one can be absolutely secure about anything. But what I do know is that it is possible both to address the issues of cost as far as certainly the poor end of society is concerned by additional support and additional help than that which has already been promised. And I also believe that energy security is important to us, and there's still a few steps that we are able to take.
Right, well, we're still waiting to hear from Sunak and Truss and what extra help they may be providing. But let's talk about energy security, because we were hearing that the National Grid has been wargaming supplies, something they do ahead of every winter, of course, but for real this time. I mean, could we be facing rationing? And we remember, you know, the 3-day week back in the 70s with Edward Heath and the miners' crisis.
Well, there are already some contracts that were signed by industry which allowed for an interruption of supply. These have been around for a number of years. They tend to be with the more the larger consumers, the larger consumption industry. This is the sort of thing that needs to be. They need to now go through in detail with National Grid. You are right that the wargaming always takes place every year. They look at the worst possible scenarios. This year it's going to be tighter than before. We must maintain, I'm afraid, running the few coal-fired power stations that are left. I think we've got a couple. We've also got some emergency diesel generated small electricity generators. We'll need to have those on stream as well. And in effect, the war games that are taking place by National Grid must include both representatives from domestic, but particularly representatives from industry, as it will always be industry that gets hit first, because you can reduce consumption by switching off one site, if you like, industrial site, much easier than switching off whatever it may be, 1,000 houses. But getting to the actual nitty-gritty right now so we know what to expect, and indeed what we all can do to reduce our consumption, is absolutely vital.
Right. I mean, the Green lobby's not going to want to hear that diesel and coal-fired power stations are going to be kicking back into action. But, I mean, we also heard about this gas storage field that we had off Yorkshire, which was huge, and it was built for precisely this kind of emergency. And Theresa May, we understand, told Centrica, well, we've actually got plenty of supply from elsewhere. We don't need this. Let's mothball that as well.
Yes, it's called Rough, actually, as the name of the storage, and it can take about 12 days gas supply. Now, the decision to close down Rough took place a number of years ago. It was when I was still at Energy UK. Yeah. And there it was always hotly debated as to, shouldn't we just have an emergency reserve? But they don't come for free. It costs money both to maintain, it costs money to fill it. And there wasn't at that time any additional grant or support or buffer or whatever being paid for by government. And a contribution at that stage would have resolved things. Right now, I believe Rough is being brought back into use. And if they're really working hard on it, it would be possible for us to perhaps get it half full, say about 6 days full.
Right. But just to press you on that point, we can
only fill it with expensive gas.
Well,
because there's no such thing as cheap gas now.
So why didn't we hedge by actually filling it with cheap gas at the time and just let it lie there till we needed it?
Yeah. Well, the world looked rather different. The world looked like we got a real surplus of gas. We got, of course, our own in the North Sea. We got a whole load coming from Norway. We've got LNG ports. We were getting lots of LNG. The world looked rather different. I do accept, though, that a number of people were always very keen on us having a greater degree of security in the UK rather than just take part in the pan-European model. It's probably worth pointing out that most European countries are in a far worse position than ourselves. They haven't got their connection to the North Sea and so on. So, you know, let's not go there. But we mustn't think that we're the only ones that have got a problem, and our problem is not as great as others. But at the same time, you know, we've had a series of situations arise which nobody ever expected. Pandemic, the war, Soviet Union, this huge heat wave that we're with, you know, I mean, the whole lot is quite extraordinary circumstances. And clearly we didn't cater for that to have resilience under those sorts of situations.
Angela, as ever, thank you very much indeed for joining us and taking us through all the options. Thank you. Well, I think after that, how about a nice, refreshing, chilled can of wine? Yes, wine. No more popping the cork or perusing the racks of a wine cellar. Just tear back a ring pull. Well, believe it or not, the popularity of a convenient can of wine growing so fast, it seems it's hard to keep up. One company, Nice Wines, seeing a 400% growth just this year. It seems that overnight they're on supermarket shelves, restaurant chains, even now on Virgin flights. They filled what they saw as a gap in the market with these lightweight aluminium cans, a smaller carbon footprint indeed than bottles. The aim to find a quicker and easier way of serving up at picnics or parties and big events such as festivals. But each can costs around £3, when remember the average cost of a glass of wine in London now an unpalatable £7. So joining us, Jerry May, co-founder of Nice Wines, our latest guest on Startup Britain. Jeremy, thank you for joining us, and I'm very grateful to say you brought some samples for us.
Yeah, Tuesday lunchtime.
I was going to say, our sommelier's off at the moment, so we'll have to have a DIY job, but that's the very point about the can of wine. You don't need the corkscrew and all the mucking around. It's a rather more sort of portable treat, if you like.
It's exactly that, yeah. When we first, my business partner Lucy and I started the business in 2019. We came up with the idea in 2018. And what we found was when we looked at the shelves for specifically the impulse moment for wine, it kind of surprised us. We'd seen that in industries like beer and gin and tonics and the like, there had been lots of innovation and disruption.
Yeah, lots of G&T mix already in the can now, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah. And what we were surprised to still see was that, first of all, that the wine on the shelves, specifically in impulse occasions, so train stations, airlines, things like that, it was plastic bottles that often people don't want to even drink out of. So what you'd find, you'd be in a train station and you'd find a plastic bottle of wine that looks like the traditional bottle of wine, but you're nearly always rummaging around for another plastic cup to pour it into. So it became sort of double single-use plastic.
OK.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we've had wine boxes which didn't really take off. Why is this really sort of hitting the mark, do you think?
I think there's a few things for us. There's the environmental factor. Let me know if you want to try.
I was just going to just pass them over just to peruse it, whatever. Yeah. So we've got Sauvignon Blanc, and we've got Pale Rosé, and we've got Malbec, a red wine as well.
Malbec. Yeah, exactly.
Right, now this is interesting, because obviously when we talk about boxes of wine, there was a lot of snob value attached to it, saying, you know, that was always the stuff that was left on the kitchen table at the end of parties, wasn't it?
To be honest with you, I think that is still somewhat the case within wine. Wine, at sort of broader level, has always been a little bit kind of obsessed with the past.
Yes.
We've always found that wine can be quite intimidating, a little bit unapproachable. Everyone's probably had that moment where you get handed the wine menu in a restaurant and everyone keeps their eyes down because...
Especially when they see the price.
Exactly. Yeah. You don't want to be the person to have to pretend...
Shove us a glass, because I'm going to open this, because the other issue is it's very acidic stuff.
Yeah.
So what about the difficulties or otherwise of actually putting wine into a can? Let me just pour this for you, and let's try and do that. Oh, that looks rather good. So that's a deep red, and obviously you don't need to have that chilled. Let me pass that to you.
Yeah, you don't need that chilled.
And I don't know if we're breaking any broadcasting rules, but it is lunchtime, and we are on the money. We're on the wine now as well. Cheers. Santé.
Yeah.
Let me just try this. Oh, that's very good. That's very smooth.
Or nice, as we would say.
Yeah, or nice, yeah. But the fact is, it works. I mean, how long could you actually have wine in a can like that, stored?
Yeah, so you were right to say that wine is a reductive liquid. These cans, have been manufactured in a very specific way to have a slightly larger or thicker lacquer on the inside.
On the inside,
exactly,
right.
Which means that reductive nature of wine isn't going to do anything to the packaging. It's when we package the wine, it's also, like with all wines, a small amount of nitrogen or CO2 will often be inserted to get rid of the oxygen, which is what can cause wine to be
go
reductive.
off.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
it's oxygen, the oxidization of wine is what's compromised.
And you can do this with anything. It's not just certain grapes or certain...
No, there are some grapes that probably lend themselves better to being canned than others. But on the whole, the can is just as robust an environment for wine as, let's say, the plastic bottle or the glass bottle.
So I'm just looking at this. This is 187 ml. I mean, as we were saying, I think a 175 ml glass of wine now in London would be £6 or £7. This is, what, about half the price?
Yeah, I mean, these products we sell in Sainsbury's for £2.65 actually per can in the large stores. But then we actually have price elasticity of our own wine. You know, these cans here would be served, as an example, at Wimbledon tennis this year, for quite significantly higher than that price.
I bet.
But that's kind of the thing with wine. It's happened with beer for a long time, is you have this loyalty and you know, people become familiar with a brand and then they feel more comfortable spending different amounts of money in different environments.
But you've got it on planes as well, Virgin Airways stocking it.
That's
so
right.
Did you actually spot the gap in the market, or is it just actually balloon with, you know...
We saw that in 2018, when we first had the idea, we looked at what was happening in America, which is where a lot of brands or a lot of food and drink trends tend to begin. We saw huge growth over there, and it seemed to be being driven by the impulse occasion, but also environmental factors.
Right.
You know, more and more, the fact that, let's say, aluminium is 100% recyclable forever is, you know, is a big benefit for the world where we're trying to use
carbon footprints and so on.
Exactly.
OK, that's a very nice Argentinian Malbec, as you say. Last question, what about English wines? Because I'm down in Sussex, the vineyards there are just everywhere. Sparkling wine. Can you do this with sparkling wine as well?
You definitely can. I think English sparkling especially has grown a lot over the last few years. It's lots of brands, very well made. There are some canned wine brands who are actually doing high-quality English sparkling. What we want to do is make sure it's doable. What we want to do is make sure that we offer, you know, a mass market, great quality option at a price that people can afford. We've heard a lot about cost of living crisis at the moment, and for us, it's really important that good quality wine can be very attainable price-wise.
And export to France as well, who knows?
Yeah, we'll see about that. See what they have to say.
Jeremy, great. Thank you very much, and bringing us a little treat, which we need in this doom and gloom.
You're very welcome.
And all good luck with it. Thanks very much indeed. Well, that is, I'm afraid, all we've got time for today. We're right out of Merlot. Well, a little bit left. And join us tomorrow at 1 p.m. for another helping of economics, business and consumer news. Not sure about the wine. But this is GB News. I'm Mark Longhurst, and you've been on the money.
This morning, the Met Office have issued an extreme heat warning. The amber warning extends across large parts of England and Wales for later this week, Thursday into Sunday. High pressure will continue to dominate, bringing sunny skies for the next few days. But towards the end of the week, slightly hotter air pushes in. Not as hot as it was in July, but the prolonged nature of this hot spell could cause some health issues. That's why we have issued that warning. There will be plenty of hot sunshine out there today. A bit more cloud across northern Scotland, maybe one or two showers, certainly across Shetland this morning, but they're tending to drift away to the north. Quite a bit of cloud over the Highlands, but otherwise just a bit of wispy cloud here and there. Plenty of strong sunshine, lifting the temperatures to the mid-20s to the high 20s, perhaps across up to 30 or 31 Celsius in the south. Through this evening, a balmy summer's evening. Still a bit breezy along the Kent coast and certainly quite windy across northern Scotland through today and overnight, and still fairly cloudy here overnight, but elsewhere largely clear skies, maybe a bit of mist forming across parts of East Anglia. Temperatures dropping no lower than about 13 or 14 Celsius in most towns and cities, so quite a warm night and another hot and sunny day to come tomorrow. Any early morning mist and fog will disappear pretty sharpish. Some mist may linger on some eastern coast. Again, a bit breezy across the Kent coast and quite windy across northern Scotland, but otherwise dry, sunny, lots of blue sky and temperatures getting a little higher tomorrow, more widely in the high 20s across the south. 31, 32 is likely in one or two locations, probably from Cardiff into the Bristol area. It's likely to be the hot spot over the next couple of days. Wednesday evening, again, a little change, although we will start to see the cloud thickening over northern Scotland, a bit of rain trickling into the Northern Isles and the Western Isles as a weather front sinks southwards. Otherwise, high pressure remains in charge. Sunny skies continue and temperatures just start to rise come Friday and Saturday across the south, we could see those values in the mid-30s.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because